Hey everybody, I'm John Alcoholic. Um, I've been to a few leads and heard a lot of stories, and it seems like a lot of folks come into this program super broken home, started drinking at 9, that kind of thing. My story is the exact opposite, almost to that. It's a story of self-will, run riot, driven by fear. So, was raised in also a religious home, Southern Baptist. Mom and dad were married 62 years. Mom just passed a little over a month ago, and they were married for 62 years. Dad was in the Navy. He got out when I was 5, almost 6, because he got tired of coming back from he was on a submarine. And he'd be gone for 3 months. They would go hide from the Soviets for 3 months, and then they'd come back home for 3 months. And he got tired of seeing us kids. I have 2 younger sisters, missing first steps, first words, all that kind of stuff. So he got out of the Navy, got a job at a nuclear power plant in Hartsville, South Carolina. So we moved there, and it was a great upbringing for a rambunctious young man, first grade. We had piney woods all around us, and weren't a lot of homes, and I mean, just running for days. I had a dog, so we're just out in the woods. You know, just got to be home by 6 o'clock when mom's yelling, and you better get your butt back home, otherwise you're not going to get to eat. Great upbringing. There was no alcohol in our house at all, none. Absolutely verboten, Southern Baptist. There was no fun either, except at the church. No dances, no parties, unless it was with other Southern Baptists. And so we grew up kind of strict. Mom was, being the Navy wife, it was her house. And when Dad came in, he was visiting for 3 months, and then he was gone again. And then when we moved to South Carolina, he was working a nuclear power plant. He was working shift work, and when he wasn't there, or when he was there, it was still Mom's house this whole time. Yeah, it was good. I mean, I was able to do pretty much what I wanted to do, which got me in trouble a few times, through elementary school. I think I went to the principal almost every day, first grade, for acting up, talking, whatever. Didn't go back after that ever again. Well, I did it once in 7th grade. But anyway, so it was good upbringing. I mean, and when I go looking back, when I talked to my dad after I came in the program and I was making amends to him, we were talking about, when I was telling him this stuff about making amends to him, and I was in AA, he was like, he sat there quiet for a while, and he was like, I was like, what are you thinking? He's like, I wonder what I did to make you this way. I'm like, well, let's talk about your birth father, who was quarter Cherokee, and on his death certificate listed cause of death, consumption. That's where it is, Dad. It just skipped you, and it hit me right between the eyes. So anyway, elementary school was great. Had a lot of friends. We decided, my dad got a job. They were building a nuclear power plant in South Texas, and her mom's dad passed when she was only like 14. So her mom and my dad's parents and all my cousins, aunt and uncles, everybody lived in Texas. We were the only ones outside of the state. As I go through this story, you'll see themes anyway. But so we moved back to Texas the summer after my 7th grade, 1976. Yeah. Moved to Texas, so I was in 8th grade. Junior high in Texas was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Junior high in South Carolina was 7th, 8th, and 9th. So I was expecting to have another 2 years in junior high to have friends and stuff. Instead, we moved to Texas, and here's this weird kid moving in from South Carolina who talks funny and dresses funny and does all that kind of stuff. So 8th grade, I was doing my best to fit in. Just wanted to be with the cool kids. Whatever they were doing, I wanted to do it. It's where I discovered marijuana, actually, first time, 8th grade. Cool kids were sneaking out after school into the woods, and when I found out what they were doing, I begged my way into that crowd to do what they were doing. Kind of continued on through high school, where when I got my driver's license at 15 and a half, there was, and the keys to the car, Friday nights and Saturday nights, and we could run around out in the country. There was actually a liquor store in town that had, small town, liquor store in town that had a drive-through, and I guess the guy at the window figured if you're old enough to drive, you're old enough to buy, because it was 18 at the time, so getting alcohol was not a problem. Lots of room out in the country, bonfires, 100 pickup trucks backed up around a bonfire was typical weekend in Bay City, Texas. So I kind of started off a little bit rough, but eventually caught up enough to the cool crowd that I could hang with them, and I knew where to get weed, I could get alcohol. A lot of times I would be the one driving because I didn't like to drink that much then. I would smoke, and so everybody else would drink, and I would be the designated driver, if that makes any sense at all. Fuck. Yeah. So, yeah. So, high school, graduated, not with honors or anything, but just like in the middle of the class. So after high school, I had no sense of direction whatsoever. I know when I was a junior in high school, I took the ASVAB test, the Armed Forces Vocational Aptitude Test, and scored pretty good, evidently. And I got a call from a Navy recruiter, and he was like, "Hey, you qualify for the Navy nuclear program." And I'm like, "Great, that's just what Dad did." So I went and talked to him, and he's like, "If you flunk out, they'll put you wherever they want you." And I was like, "All right, I'm done. No, I'm not even going to think about that." So just kind of aimless, didn't have a goal, didn't have a mission. I had already done high school, and what was the next thing? Well, I guess I'll go to college. I took the first semester off. In the next county over, Wharton County, there was a junior college there, so I'll go there. It's a 30-minute drive, but I was used to getting up at the crack of noon, so it was kind of difficult to make classes. Didn't finish that at all. Kind of got a bug, and it's like, man, I really got to do something. So I went around looking at other colleges. Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, Texas, which is 3 hours away. So it's an hour and a half to Houston, and then another hour and a half on the other side of that is Huntsville. So it's not too far. It's far enough and not too close. My problem was I didn't have a car. So I had to hitch rides with other people from my hometown that were going to that school. It was kind of a weekend college where a lot of kids from Houston would go to this 4-year school, Monday through Thursday, and then Thursday after class, they're splitting back to their house in Houston for the weekend, and they would come back Sunday night. I was stuck there most weekends because I didn't have a car. But I did have friends, and we did cut loose. That's where I really started perfecting my drinking career. College was, at least that year, the only year that I was there, really. Yeah, Mom and Dad paid for the first year. I was working. Mom and Dad paid for the first year, and then they saw my 1.1 GPA, and you're going to pay for half the second year. And so my girlfriend and I at the time decided, no, we're just going to go move to Austin and hang out and do whatever there. That first girlfriend actually turned into wife number one. And we were both young, dumb, partying, totally codependent relationship. I mean, we only saw value in ourselves when we looked at, according to how the other person looked at us. Both of us did. And it just festered until we never did anything about it. It was just there. So we were in Austin for about a year and a half, and by this time it's late 1986. And I talked to my dad, and he said that the nuclear power plant in Bay City, the one he works at, was hiring. And they were looking to hire individuals who were from that area. Somebody that was young, that would, they would train them. They were green. They didn't want anybody with experience. They wanted green individuals that they could hire, train the way they wanted them, and then they could spend the next 35 years there. That was going to be their career. I was like, great. So I went and took a couple of tests, an aptitude test and it's called the MMPI. It's some mental thing to make sure you're not just like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So I somehow passed both of them, yeah. Somehow passed both of them, and they were like, great, we would like to hire you. And we have these 3 different positions. One of them was a plant operator. So you're going to go out and turn valves and stuff. The second one was an instrumentation and calibration technician. And then the third one was radiation safety. And I was like, so I called Dad. I was like, Dad, which one of these should I go for? And he's like, radiation safety. Because it doesn't really require that much. And it's like, perfect. So one of the conditions of being hired on, though, was I had to go, all the new hirees had to go to Houston to go see a shrink. And so I went to go see the psychiatrist as one of the conditions of hiring. And he asked me how much I drink. Mind you, I'm 24, okay? How much do you drink? I'm like, beer 2 a day if I feel like it. Some days I don't drink at all, which is a total friggin' lie. And so he moved on to another topic, and then a minute later he's back. Tell me about this drinking again. Several times he went into this thing, and I was like, why do you keep asking about it? He's like, I'm just curious. He's like, do you think you're an alcoholic? I'm like, no. I picture in my mind an alcoholic as some bum in a gutter, wearing old clothes, dirty, just disheveled. And I was like, no, I'm not an alcoholic. I have a beer or 2 a day when I do drink. And he's like, okay. I said, what's your definition of an alcoholic? He goes, somebody has a beer or 2 a day that, whatever. Anyway, he must have signed off on it. I got hired on. So I start working as a radio safety tech in this really cool industry. I mean, just for me, seeing all the mechanic and how everything is all put together. And also when I got hired on there, they were just finishing up construction of Unit 1. So I'm getting to see how everything is being built. These massive pumps and the reactor where the fuel's going to go and all the heat exchangers and all the mechanics on that were just incredible. I was just like, wow, this is great. I learned a lot about it. We finally got fuel on site, started making electricity, and it was like 8 months later when we started doing that. And so, I'm working there and I'm doing well. Been there for about 4 years. January 1991, got fired. Failed the piss test. Marijuana. I guess the Nuclear Regulatory Commission doesn't really like people who work at power plants to be doing coke or drinking or smoke pot or any of that kind of stuff. So ended up getting fired. 26 years old, sitting there with the HR rep and the lawyer and the doctor, and they were telling me why I'm getting fired. I'm like, shit. I hitched a ride in with a friend of mine today. How am I going to get home? Because he's still got to go to work. Hey, Dad, can I get a ride home? Most uncomfortable ride in my life. He's not mad. He was not angry at all. I could just see, he tried to have a poker face, but I could see the disappointment in his face. So I ended up working a couple of menial jobs. One of them was at a Chinese plastics factory that, thank God, the hospital was right across the street because there was a lot of people that got hurt at that place. I went to work for a buddy of mine who had a six-yard dump truck and a backhoe. Whatever we could do, we did with that stuff. That was up outside of Dallas-Fort Worth, so I had to get an apartment and, making just enough money to get by, but that's what I was doing, was just getting by. Of course, the car I was driving was a piece of shit, needed new tires, needed oil, but I needed beer. So the car can wait. According to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, you're not allowed to even think about working a nuclear power plant at that time for 6 months after you failed a drug screen. But I had heard that there was other work at other places, Department of Energy facilities, that would take you after you've been out for 6 months, and all you have to do is be clean and you can be hired. So I ended up working as a contractor at Savannah River site in Aiken, Georgia, for 6 months. It was horrible. But there was, again, a lot of drinking. I was making better money, so I could afford better beer. Met a couple ladies, young ladies there, and it's 6 months. It was just in and out. And then finally got contact with another contractor company that this thing up in Columbus, Ohio was happening. Would you be willing to travel to Columbus and work for 3 to 5 years for this amount of money? I'm like, yeah, when do you want me to start? So I moved here in October 92 on a 3 to 5 year contract and been here for 32 years now. So kind of put down roots a little bit, but still, yeah. While I was here, I was working at Battelle, and you only had to, when I started at Battelle, you only had to pee in a cup once, and that was when at hiring time. Then after that, it was for cause. So the smoking was back on again, along with all the drinking. The crowd that they brought in, all the contractors that they brought in were a lot of folks that were like me, had pissed and missed in nuclear power plants, and this is the kind of work they had to do, but we can get away with a lot more now, so we're gonna. Met wife number 2 during that time, because again, she was part of the cool crowd. They had known each other at other places, and so to get in with that crowd, it was, if I married into a cool crowd, I guess you could say. I didn't think about it that way, but I did. That didn't last long at all, because there was a lot of sharing, let's just say, inside the cool crowd that I wasn't aware of, but that happened, yeah. So still just continued to do what I wanted to do, be who I wanted to be, even though there was no mission. It was just get up and do it again until you get the paycheck, and then after that, get up and do it again for the next paycheck. It was just on a weekly cycle, it seemed like. Same thing every weekend, same people. Trying not to wrap my car around a tree a lot of times. Then that project ended after about 8-9 years, something like that. We finally got everything all cleaned up, and all those contractors moved away. Battelle had, in their infinite wisdom, seemed to hire me as a house tech, so now I'm actually Battelle employee after about 10 years as a contractor. So much more stable now. There's no, I still can do whatever I want to do, and as long as I don't do something stupid, there's no consequences. So I can keep doing what I want to do. Met wife number 3. Yeah, that was a long, tortuous ride for both of us, I would have to say. I certainly did my part in helping that 20-year marriage end, but again, it was over 20 years, almost 21 years actually, where there was a lot of just arguing, trying to control. She's trying to control me, I'm trying to control her, me not knowing that I don't have a hula hoop at that time. It's like it's all out there and it's all mine for me to take care of. I can fix her, she can fix me, and it's just stupid, just flat out stupid. We had a son out of that union. We actually dated for 4 months, got married. 4 months later, she's pregnant. Was finding out it was a son, I'm the only son. Like I said, I have two younger sisters. I'm the only son, so finding out and my sisters had daughters, so finding out my son was going to carry on the bloodline, my parents were ecstatic, especially my dad was just ecstatic. So when the time came for him to be born, they were in town, and this is an example of kind of anyway, it is what you think it is. But my wife would ask me to tell my parents to go back to Texas, that she didn't want them there. So I'm like stuck between a rock and a hard place. What do I do? Nothing. I don't say anything to them, and I don't tell her that I'm not going to do that. So that festered, that one moment festered for 20 years between us. There was actually discussion up until the time we got divorced about that time. Yeah. So anyway, I'm drinking this whole time. After a while, it was just, going golfing and drinking and going to football games, drinking, drinking. Everything revolved around drinking. I would even, at times, our house was like 9 miles away from where I worked, and I would stop at the convenience store, pick up a tall boy for the ride to the store closer to get beer for the night. So it wrapped up, and then a lot of times it was just sitting in the garage. It eventually became me just sitting in the garage, isolated. We had friends at the beginning of our marriage, and they all decided to go their own way because of the way we were together. A lot of misery. We finally did get divorced, but it came after a lot of cost to both of us and to our son. I think that one of the reasons that the reason that I decided that I wasn't going to file for a divorce was because our son would be better off with both parents instead of just switching back and forth between homes. And hindsight being 2020 was a mistake. That we both, especially me, let my ego get in the way of making a better decision, a better life for him. Before we got divorced, I was stressed. I finally got to the point, after so many years, I finally got to the point where I wasn't eating much. I was living on protein bars and alcohol. I finally it was just like, we'd had one major blow up, and my son was 15 at the time. And I was like, that's the next day. I thought about it, and the next day I was like, one of us has to move out. She's not leaving. I might as well go. It has to be me. Bless you. It has to be me. So finally moved out. I'd actually stopped drinking by that time. I forgot about that. I figured that alcohol was a problem, a little bit maybe, and that I could actually stop the issues. I can stop my side of the issues if I was to stop drinking. So I did. About a month before I moved out. The place I moved into was not too far from here, and I did exactly what the opening says. I was taking long walks every day. I was walking 2.5 miles every day, walking through 3 parks, walking by Scarlet every day, eating healthy, drinking a lot of water and green tea, and dropping some weight, and still just miserable, not knowing, not being able to control what was going on at the house because I wasn't there. Ate me up. After a year, actually 13 months of that, that was November 2018, January 1st, 2020, a buddy calls me and he's like, no drinking buddy, he calls me up. Hey, you feel like drinking some bourbon and watching football? Sure, why not? Got nothing else going on. So a handle later, in 3 hours, we drank a handle of bourbon. I drove to the store and got another one. We put down most of that. And then the next day I woke up feeling great, not hungover at all. Oh man, that should have been my sign right there, right? If you can do that and not feel, man, you've got a problem. So, moved to another location. My son was coming over, once a week. We'd have dinner. It was still just not great. Having to have discussions with her, and it just, I was still drinking a lot, still smoking some weed. Finally, when he was a senior in high school, she's like, "Why don't you move back into the house, because I can't control him anymore." Okay, so I moved back in the house. His senior year, that would have been late 2020. And, told him not your cook, not your maid. You will keep your room clean, and you can eat whatever I'm cooking, but don't ask for, I'm not short order cook. We got on pretty good for a little while, and I was still drinking, but again, by myself, most of the time. One day it was Saturday. On Saturday, he and a buddy of his went disc golfing. And I had a big brush pile, a little bit smaller than what you had out there, Linda, but it's still a big brush pile. And decided I need to burn that. And what goes better with a fire than bourbon? So, of course, I went and got a bottle of bourbon, killed that. He got back, and he had lost his wallet, and for some reason I just came unglued. He called his mom over to help him. Before I came unglued, I was like, "You need to call your mom over, because I'm in no condition to try and help you find your wallet or figure out what to do next, cancel your cards, get a driver's license, all that kind of stuff." It's Saturday. I always knew, especially after he started driving, I always knew that there was going to come a time when I was going to get a call. "You need to come get your son, he's in a wreck. You need to come," or "He's in a car with somebody else." I always knew there was going to be a time, but that wasn't enough to make me not drink. So he lost his wallet, his mom's there, and I'm just sitting there stewing, and that was the night I had my bottom. April 8th, 2023, had my bottom, did something I never thought that I would do, and Sunday, so they both leave the house. Sunday, all I can do is sit in shame, holding my head in my hands. What the fuck have I done? How am I going to fix this? I can't fix this. This has gone beyond everything else I've ever done in my life. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Something popped into my head, and to this day, it's God in my mind, trying an AA meeting. Well, I don't know what AA is. I mean, I'm 58 years old, and I still don't know what AA is, really. So I found a meeting on Monday night. I went to work. That's all I could think about. I wasn't at work. I mean, my body was at work, but I was not at work. Couldn't stop thinking about just getting to that meeting. So I drove to the meeting that I had picked on Monday night in Dublin on Muirfield Drive, and there's not a car in the damn parking lot. Not one. And I sat there, and I checked every door, and I sat there more. Went and checked every door again. Where is the meeting? I need this. I gotta have this. Just pissed off. Okay, tomorrow's another day. Find another meeting. Found a meeting it was a little bit closer, up off of Sawmill, and got there early, make sure there was cars in the parking lot. So I'm sitting there, and I'm ready to go inside. I can just feel this. I've lost all control. I've got nothing. I've got nowhere to go. I've got nobody to talk to, nowhere to turn. This This is my last it. This is my last thing. Otherwise, I'm just going to check out. So I'm sitting there in my car, and I see another car pull up. Guy climbs out. This guy I used to party with. He's got 6 years. And I knew he had been sober, but he climbed out of that car. I walked up to him, and he looked at me, and I was like, "What brings you here?" And I said, "Nothing good." And he said, "Nothing ever does. Come on inside." So he walked inside, and we're walking down the steps to the basement, and I'm just bawling, walking down those steps because I knew was where I needed to be. I knew that there had to be something there. Had to be. So we walk in. Rick introduces me to the secretary. "Hey, Rob, this is John. We need a book." Get to this meeting. It's men and women. There's probably about 45 people in this thing. And I'm just sitting there. I cannot stop crying. I'm not just bawling, but I can't. I'm weepy, man. And I'm listening to all the readings. Is anybody here for the first time? Yeah. Got my 24-hour coin. Got the book. 15 names and phone numbers in it. I knew there was something there. I knew there was something there. I knew it. I knew there was something in that meeting that I wanted. I heard everybody laughing and joking. I'm sitting here fucking crying. I want that. After the meeting, Rick's like, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow night?" It's like, "There's another meeting Wednesday night, even closer to your house. Be there 7:30. Cool. Meet you there. So I show up at the meeting, and it's a smaller meeting. I'm still shaky, but I'm, able to listen a little bit better and understand a little bit more. This young punk comes up to me. He's like, "Are you serious about this, man? Are you serious about this, man? Because if you are, there's this thing on Thursday night you really need to come to. This group is great, man." I'm like, "All right, man, where's it at? Call me tomorrow. I'll tell you where." "No, dude, just tell me where it's at." "Call me tomorrow if you're serious." "All right, I'll call you then." So called him Thursday night. Sitting there, and Dave leans over to me. He's like, "Hey, if you got something you want to talk about." So I brought up a topic, and it was like, we talked about it. And I was like, this is pretty fucking awesome. Stick around. Well, there's a meeting after the meeting. Okay, cool. So I'm sitting in a chair. I didn't know to bring a chair. I'm sitting in a hard-ass chair like that. I'd already been there for an hour. My butt's about half numb. And I got one person sitting on this side of me, one person sitting on the other side of me, just firing questions. "What makes you think you're an alcoholic?" It was like, all right. "You really got to get a sponsor." No, it was like, okay. Greatest meeting ever. That first one. I got filled with hope. I knew I had somewhere to turn. At least I knew I could start turning around the corner. Went to the Monday night. Even better. You guys saved my life, man. Got a sponsor, started working the steps. If anybody tells you that they like doing step 4, they're lying. I'm telling you right now, man, it's not 4 and 5. But I found it necessary. I also, before I started working the steps, I went out to Mike's, and he posed the question to me, name the 3 worst things that have ever happened to you, and did the worst result actually happen? That's when I discovered that God was actually watching over me all this time, and that he has something for me, that I have worth, that I have something to give, and that, worked the steps. When I did my 3rd step, that, up until that time, I still had a little taste for something, wasn't sure what it was. But after I worked that 3rd step, and said that prayer and honestly meant it for the first time in my life, I could actually feel that the next day it was like that obsession was just gone, man. I actually had my first experience with serenity at that moment. And that only drove me to work even harder. I just, there's too many coincidences that have happened in my life to not think that God has had a hand somewhere along the way. When I was, during COVID, I was working from home and I couldn't stand anymore, so I went to work at a hardware store. This little old guy comes in, he's a regular customer, got to talking to him, cool guy, Steve Sandor is his name. Turns out, through a fortunate series of events, turns out I found out that he was on the submarine at the same time as my father. He was a crewmate in 1967 and 1968 with my father on the same submarine. What's really cool about that, and which really shows how God's working in my life, is that he's a 35-year AA guy. We just keep popping up everywhere, don't we? So it's amazing when I think about things like that. It's like, okay, there's a huge sign. But then when you look at all the little things that go on in our lives, in our day-to-day lives, I'm just amazed at this all the time. I can find something every day, and I don't have to look very hard to find a miracle in my life, or to find this is the reason why I got up today, to experience this, to learn this, or to teach this even. I will say that having a great sponsor who understands me and where I was at and what I was going through, because our paths are somewhat similar, has been a blessing. Having this family, having people that I know that God has put into my life to catch my back and to give me grief when it's needed is awesome. Some of the things that I've learned, just real quick, man, I had them. One of the things is to not belittle myself, because I've always had a self-esteem issue. I remember one time, Tommy and I were driving back from Mike's house, and I was just telling something, and I accidentally called myself, just trying to be funny, because guys do that, call myself a piece of shit. And I was laughing, and he was like stoic. He's like, let me ask you this. You really think God makes pieces of shit? No, he doesn't. So that's one of the things I've learned, is not to belittle myself. Another thing that I've learned is to not seek praise. There's nothing wrong with receiving praise, but if I do an action in search of that praise, wrong motive. So I didn't think I'd make 30 minutes, but I did. So with that, I passed. So thank y'all. Love you.
We'll open up the floor for comments and questions now that he's still up there before we can get away.